This happened just a few weeks ago. I'm a 32-year-old nurse, and I've worked night shifts at this urban hospital for 5 years. I've seen my fair share of strange things, but that week was different. I felt a weight on my chest each night as I walked through the dimly lit halls. Maybe it was the stress of my ailing mother. I'm not sure. I just know something felt off. The first night was mostly quiet. I did my rounds after midnight. The fluorescent lights hummed like bees. I checked on my patients. When I reached room 213, I heard her voice. The patient, frail and wide-eyed, stared at me with fear. She said someone was watching her. I thought she was just confused. I assured her everything was all right, but still, the air felt thick and heavy. The hours crawled by. Around 3, I heard a soft sound near the nurse's station. It was like someone was humming. I turned and saw Dr. Khan standing there. His face was shadowed, and he spoke in riddles about shadows and feelings. I was uneasy. He felt like a stranger, though he worked here. His words twisted in my head. Sometimes, the things we fear are only reflections of ourselves, he said. I just nodded. I didn't understand. He left, and I stood there, heart racing as the humming faded into silence. As the shift went on, I felt more uneasy. Near the end, I noticed a figure at the far end of the corridor. He stood there, still as a statue. At first, I thought he was a family member visiting a patient. His eyes were hollow, and he stared at me like he was searching for something. My skin prickled as he moved closer. I asked if he needed any help, but he just tilted his head, like a confused dog. I felt the urge to run. Then I took a step back, and he vanished around the corner. I was left feeling cold and all alone. By the time the week ended, I was jumpy. I couldn't shake the feeling from the encounters. My thoughts would replay the patient's fear, Dr. Khan's strange words, and the man who disappeared. Was it just exhaustion? I sat at the nurse's desk, gripping it tightly as I prepared for another long shift. The echoing halls haunted my mind. Then, just as I was about to turn away, I heard that humming again. It was closer this time, almost like someone was right behind me. "Why are you with her?" I heard whispered in my ear. I turned fast, but nobody was there. I felt cold sweat drip down my back, and my heart raced in my chest. I was alone, or at least I thought I was. I never forgot those encounters. They linger in the back of my mind, waiting for me at night. The following night brought a biting chill to the air, even inside the hospital. I felt more on edge than before. I made my rounds, reminding myself to breathe deeply, but the atmosphere pressed in on me. Room 213 was still occupied by the same patient. Her eyes widened as I entered, like mine were the last familiar face she wanted to see. "They're here again," she whispered, her voice trembling. My stomach dropped. "I can feel them watching." I reassured her, though I felt the chill seep deeper into my bones. I hurried out, my mind racing. I wanted to tell her it was just the night, just the darkness playing tricks, but her fear felt real enough. I returned to the nurse's station, and the silence wrapped around me. Hours drifted by slowly. I barely registered the paperwork piling up, my attention pulled to the empty hallway. Then I heard it, the humming. It wasn't just a distant sound. It resonated, wrapping around me like a fog. It was coming from the break room. With caution, I approached the door. I had to know who was there. But the humming stopped abruptly as I entered. The room was empty, the lights flickering overhead. I glanced around, and that was when I noticed something on the floor, a small, dust-covered doll with eyes that seemed to glint in the dim light. I picked it up, feeling an uneasy shiver creep down my spine. Why was it here? Just then, I heard a rustling sound behind me. I spun around, heart pounding, but the room was still empty. I was hyper-aware of every little creak and groan in the building. That's when I heard it again, why are you with her? The voice was low, a quality like someone trying to hide. I stiffened, glancing back at the door. I didn't know who was there, but my instinct screamed at me to leave. I dropped the doll and rushed out, almost bumping into Dr. Khan. He smiled, but his eyes looked different, darker. You shouldn't ignore whispers in the dark, he said casually, walking past me. I felt a knot tighten in my stomach. Was he part of this? The night wore on, and I continued my rounds, but I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. I decided to check on room 213 again. The patient was now eerily quiet. I pushed the door open and found her staring blankly at the wall. Her bed covers were twisted, and her mouth moved silently. I leaned in, trying to hear what she was saying, but there was nothing, only a deep sense of foreboding. Then I saw him again, standing outside the window. That unsettling figure, with hollow eyes, stared back at me. I knew it was him. I knew he was watching, and now he was looking right at me. I felt a surge of panic. I turned quickly to reach for the call button, but when I looked back, he was gone. Just as I steadied my breath, I heard a voice, soft, almost a whisper, saying, "Why are you with her?" My own breath caught in my throat. I felt a cold presence pushing against me. I couldn't just stand there. I rushed out into the hallway, determined to escape the weight of it all. That's when I saw it. The doll, sitting at the nurse's station, its eyes glimmering in the half-light. My heart raced as I approached it, the weight of dread spilling into my veins. I picked it up, and that's when I noticed the stitching on its dress strangely familiar. It was the same shade as the patient's sheets in room 213. Suddenly, the hum returned, louder than before. It resonated through my mind, drowning out my thoughts. I felt time stretch like an elastic band about to snap. I needed to know. I had to confront whatever was behind this, or lose myself to the shadows entirely. The next hour felt like a blur. I stood at the nurse's station with the doll still in my hands, its eyes unwavering. I couldn't shake the unease pressing down on me. I looked at the clock. Just past midnight. The night stretched endlessly ahead of me. I needed to do something, so I decided to go back to room 213. The silence in the hallway felt heavier now, almost suffocating. I pushed the door open and found the patient still staring at the wall. Her expression had changed, she looked almost vacant, like she was somewhere else entirely. "Are you okay?" I asked, my voice wavering. She turned her head slowly, her eyes wide but vacant. "They're whispering," she mumbled. "You shouldn't talk to them." A cold sweat trickled down my back. Who was she talking about? I wished I could brush it off, but the weight of her words struck me like a physical blow. I reached out to touch her arm, and she flinched, her eyes darting toward the window. I turned to look, nothing but darkness outside. Then, in that stillness, I heard it again, a low humming. It crept in from the hallway, wrapping around me. I glanced back at her, she seemed to withdraw further, as if she was fading away. I needed to get her help. I turned to call for a doctor, but something stopped me. The doll. My eyes were drawn back to it, almost against my will. I opened my palm, revealing it to the light. It felt warm now, almost alive. In its presence, I heard a voice again, stronger this time, echoing in my ears, "Why are you with her?" I shook my head, taking a step back. This wasn't happening. I had to leave. As I backed away, I felt an icy tendril brush past me. I spun around, the lights overhead flickering violently. Dr. Khan appeared in the doorway, looking calm but somehow distorted, like a picture out of focus. "What is going on?" he asked, his voice too casual for the moment. "There's something wrong with her. We need to get help," I stammered, feeling panic rise in my throat. Dr. Khan raised an eyebrow. "You're not seeing it clearly." He stepped forward, and for a moment, the humming seemed to pulse between us. I recoiled instinctively. "Please, just back up," I said, my words tumbling out in haste. "I need to call for someone else." His expression hardened, his smile vanishing. "You don't want to do that. You might end up like her." I opened my mouth to protest, to demand he explain, but before I could utter a sound, the lights went out completely, enveloping us in darkness. Just as my heartbeat thundered in the silence, I heard the faintest whisper cutting through the void, louder now, "Why are you with her?" I felt a presence shifting beside me, and in that instant, I understood what I had to do. I needed to break this cycle. With trembling hands, I clutched the doll, ready to confront whatever shadow loomed over us. Then, deepening the shadow, came the unmistakable sound of footsteps approaching, echoing down the empty hall. I wasn't alone, and suddenly everything felt dangerously real. I stood frozen in place, my heart racing as the footsteps drew nearer. They were slow and deliberate, like a predator stalking its prey. I glanced at the patient, but her gaze remained unfocused, her lips barely moving as if caught in another world. I needed to act before the shadow closed in on us. With a burst of courage, I stepped back toward the door, keeping my eyes fixed on the hallway. The sound intensified, echoing off the walls and swirling in the darkness. Whoever or whatever was coming didn't sound friendly. "Dr. Khan." I called out, my voice shaky but desperate. "Are you there?" Silence answered, thick and oppressive. The humming grew louder, vibrating through the air, as if the very walls of the hospital were alive. I could feel it pulsing in my bones. I swallowed hard, gripping the doll tightly as I felt its warmth against my palm. Then I saw a flicker of light at the end of the hallway. A figure emerged, distorted in the dim glow. I strained to see it clearly, my breath shallow as I took an involuntary step back. "Help me," came a voice, familiar yet strange. It was an echo, a memory stirring in the recesses of my mind. I squinted harder. It was a woman, her hair disheveled, face pale and gaunt. Her eyes flickered with a haunted look. "Who are you?" I asked. "What do you want?" "I'm trapped," she said. "You have to." She stopped abruptly, her expression shifting to panic. "Don't let them take you, too." The warning rang in my ears, but before I could react, the lights flickered back on, bathing the hallway in cold fluorescent light. The woman was gone. I blinked, hoping my eyes were just playing tricks on me, but the chill in my spine told me otherwise. I turned back to room 213. The patient was still staring blankly at the wall, but now a single tear rolled down her cheek. "They're watching," she murmured. "You have to hide." I forced myself to take a deep breath. "Hide? From what?" Before she could answer, the lights flickered again. The humming intensified, and the shadows seemed to stretch across the walls, creeping toward me. I hastily backed out of the room, clutching the doll like a lifeline. I felt an urgent need to leave but knew I couldn't abandon the patient. That haunting voice from down the hall echoed in my mind, "Don't let them take you." Who was they? And what would they take? I couldn't let it turn into something worse. Suddenly, a loud crash resounded behind me. Something had fallen in the hallway, and in that moment, I felt an overwhelming sense of dread wash over me. I whipped around just in time to see a figure dart past the entrance of room 215, a blur of movement that sent my heart racing. I felt exposed, the doll now pulsing in my grip as if sensing my fear. My instincts screamed at me to run, yet something compelled me to stand my ground. I needed to uncover the truth behind this madness before it swallowed me whole. "Show yourself." I called out, my voice firm despite the tremors in my limbs. Silence followed, a void filled only by the oppressive weight of the unseen. I tightened my grip on the doll, bracing myself for whatever came next. With a gut feeling that this wasn't merely about survival anymore, I prepared to unravel the darkness surrounding me. But then, from the corner of my eye, I saw movement again, a shadow lurking at the edge of the light. And with that, I realized I was not just being watched, I was being hunted. I took a step toward the light, my mind racing. The patient's warning echoed again in my ears. I could feel the air thickening around me, almost alive with primal fear. Whatever waited just beyond the shadows was not here to help. "Hello?" I called, my voice coming out shaky and strained. The silence that answered felt heavier now, as if it pressed against me. Then, without warning, the lights flickered yet again, plunging the hallway into darkness before sputtering back to life. I squinted, expecting to see the shadow darting away. Instead, a figure stood at the end of the corridor, motionless and indistinct. My heart pounded, and I could see the outline beginning to shift. I steadied my breathing, trying to remain calm. "Who is there?" I demanded, hoping that boldness could conjure courage. No response came. The figure remained still, a silhouette shrouded in gray. My instincts screamed at me to retreat, but curiosity clashed with my fear. I took a step forward, feeling the doll's warmth seep through my fingers. Suddenly, it moved, gliding toward me with a smoothness that felt unnatural. As the fluorescent lights flickered above, I caught a glimpse of its face, a gaunt expression, eyes hollow and dark. They seemed to bore into my soul, searching for something buried deep within. "Please," it whispered, voice barely audible. "Help me." The word struck a chord, resonating with a familiarity I couldn't place. I instinctively took a step back, hitting the wall behind me. "What do you want?" I asked, desperation creeping into my voice. "Find me," it urged, before cutting off with a shuddering breath. The figure seemed to ripple, and suddenly it was gone. Just vanished, as if it had never existed. I blinked, overwhelmed. The enforced silence threatened to suffocate me, and I quickly turned back to room 213. The patient was now sitting up, her eyes wide with fear. "You shouldn't have talked to her," she hissed. "You don't understand." "Talk to who?" I barely managed to ask, confusion and dread washing over me. "The one you saw. They come for you when you engage," she muttered, her voice trembling. "You have to get out of here now." Before I could respond, another loud crash echoed from further down the hallway, followed by an unsettling laughter that reverberated against the tiles. The sound sent chills racing down my spine, and I instinctively looked toward the noise. "Stay here," I ordered the patient, he'd slipping away quickly as my need to investigate clawed at me. What was that laughter? Was it another patient? Or something else? I had to know. With each step I took, the air grew colder. The laughter faded into whispers, incoherent yet laced with malicious intent. I turned the corner toward room 215, driven by a mix of fear and certainty that I had to confront whatever lay ahead. Then everything went dark. The entire floor plunged into complete blackness, and the oppressive quiet blanketed every sound. A close presence slithered behind me, and I felt a rush of icy air sweep past, sending a jolt of terror through my body. "Run," a voice whispered directly in my ear, but it wasn't a voice I recognized. I spun around, but there was no one there. My breath quickened, and in the darkness, I felt the weight of unseen eyes fixed on me. I fumbled backward, desperate for the safety of the light. In that moment, I realized the hunt was only beginning. I stumbled forward in the dark, my hands outstretched, searching for the wall that would guide me back. The whispers had returned, taunting me, weaving in and out of my thoughts. I didn't feel alone anymore. Whatever it was close. "Please," I pleaded into the void, my voice trembling. "Just leave me alone." The darkness lingered, almost smothering. I shoved my back against the wall and closed my eyes, trying to calm the chaotic heartbeat in my chest. I couldn't let fear win. I had to find the light. After what felt like an eternity, the lights flickered back on. I gasped at the sudden brightness, blinking away the disorienting shadows that had just felt so alive. The hallway was empty, but I felt a lingering chill that suggested someone or something had just been there. I took a deep breath, trying to regain my composure. Then, a soft thud echoed from room 215, pulling my attention. I hesitated, the warning from the patient replaying in my mind. But the curiosity gnawed at me, so I approached the door, heart pounding louder with each step. I reached for the handle, but it was cold, stirring a sense of foreboding. Pushing the door ajar, I peered inside. The room was dim, the curtains drawn tightly. An unfamiliar figure sat in the corner. "Who's there?" I asked, my voice a mixture of caution and curiosity. The figure turned slowly, revealing a pale face, etched with deep shadows. "Help him," it rasped, pointing toward the bed. I shifted my gaze, and for a moment, I froze. A patient lay there, eyes glazed and unresponsive. "Help who?" I shot back, panic creeping in. There was something wrong about this. I could feel it in my bones. "Time runs out," the figure whispered, its voice barely breaking the silence. "He won't last." I stepped closer, urgency replacing my fear, only to realize the bed was empty. The patient had vanished, leaving behind only rumpled sheets. The whispering intensified, swirling around me like a storm. "They come when you see them." I stepped back, and the figure lunged, fingers outstretched. I slammed the door shut, heart racing. The laughter returned, louder this time, echoing through the walls. It was no longer a distant sound but a chorus of malicious glee, resonating just outside the door. "Leave me alone!" I shouted, my voice cracking. A loud bang, more insistent this time, shook the door. I turned on my heel and ran down the hallway, desperate for the safety of the lobby. But with each stride, the shadows lengthened, and the air grew colder. As I neared the stairs, something caught my attention out of the corner of my eye. I skidded to a halt, heart in my throat. It was the doll I had carried earlier, now lying on the floor. Its tiny stitching glimmered ominously under the harsh fluorescent lights. I bent to pick it up, feeling a strange pull in my chest. The moment my fingers brushed against the fabric, the whispers quieted. I heard a faint voice, calm yet desperate. "Find me." A chill ran down my spine. I dropped the doll, turning to flee again, but the hallway twisted unexpectedly. I couldn't navigate my way back. With the laughter growing angrier behind me, I felt like I was spiraling into something unknown. I had to uncover the truth, and I had to do it fast. Then the lights flickered again. I knew something was coming, and I couldn't hide from it any longer. I bolted down the corridor, the laughter surging behind me like a tidal wave. Each footfall felt heavier, burdened by the dread pooling in my gut. The exit sign loomed ahead, but the shadows clawed at my heels, twisting the very fabric of reality around me. Then, a door creaked open just to my left. Instinct screamed at me to keep running, but curiosity anchored my feet. I glanced back. The hallway behind me swirled with darkness, and my only option was to step into the unknown. I pushed through the door, heart thudding loud enough to drown out everything else. The room was dimly lit, a stark contrast to the chaos outside. Machines beeped softly, the rhythmic punctuations calming, for a moment, my racing thoughts. I turned to see a nurse, her eyes wide with shock. She stood by a patient's bed, the sheets stark white against the shadowy walls. "Are you okay?" she asked, worry etched into her features. I opened my mouth to answer but the words caught in my throat. It was the same room, the same patient I thought I'd seen before. Only now, he lay awake, the flicker of life returning to his gaze. "Help him," the nurse urged, pointing desperately. "We can't lose him." I stepped closer, confusion flooding my mind. What does he need? What happened?" Her gaze flicked nervously to the window. I followed her gaze, and my blood ran cold. Outside stood the figure from before, the one that had urged me to help the man. Its shadow shimmered in the dim light, its mouth moving as if whispering to the night. "Don't look at it," the nurse shouted, snapping me back. "We can't let it in." I turned back to the nurse, desperate for guidance, but she was frozen, her eyes wide with fear. The beeping of the machines became erratic, and the male patient's eyes rolled back into his head. Panic seized me. What do we do? Call for help. We need to get him stabilized. She shouted, but I couldn't move. I felt the air thicken around me. The laughter pushed against my eardrums, curling around my thoughts. Help him, the whispers echoed, the voice rising in intensity. I took a step back, glancing between the nurse and the figure outside. I need to find the light. I shouted, the urgency clawing at me. The nurse darted toward the phone but suddenly froze, a look of horror overcoming her. No. She gasped. It's here. I turned, and the figure was now inside the room. Its presence darkened the space, casting long shadows that seemed to swallow everything in their path. I felt a weight bearing down on me, a pressing need to flee. That was when I saw a series of images flickering across the patient's face. Each flash revealed a moment, a memory tinged with despair and pleading for salvation. I realized then that the whispers weren't only about the patient, they were also the echoes of his past. You have to choose, the figure rasped, its voice a smooth caress of dread. Save him or join him. I stood frozen, the walls around me closing in. Somehow, I knew my next move mattered more than anything else. I took a deep breath, gathering every ounce of courage. Enough. I screamed, and as those words left my lips, the air shifted. Shadows surged away, and the figure shrieked, disintegrating into wisps of darkness. The lights flickered back to life, and the nurse blinked back to reality. I rushed to the bed, feeling the pull of the patient's gaze. But his eyes were now filled with something else, hope. I could barely believe we had a chance, but then an even darker thought crossed my mind. What if this wasn't over? That's when the whispers began again, faint and haunting, reminding me of what remained to be uncovered. I turned to the nurse, my hands trembling as adrenaline coursed through me. What just happened? I asked, my voice steadying as reality began to settle around us. She shook her head, as if trying to shake off a lingering nightmare. I don't know, she replied, her breath still shallow. It shouldn't be here. Not after what we just did. We need to call security, now. I glanced at the patient, relieved to see him still awake, but a wave of unease washed over me as the shadows fluttered at the edges of the room. But what if it comes back? I questioned, the fear knotting in my stomach. The nurse's eyes widened again, and I felt a chill run down my spine. It can come back unless we banish it completely, she warned. That means we need to confront it once and for all. We can't let it roam. I nodded, though the weight of her words felt like a boulder pressing down on my chest. But how? I don't even know what it is. Think, she urged, her voice rising slightly. The figure, it looked familiar to you. What did you see? Memories tumbled through my mind, flashes of faces, whispers of words not fully formed. Then everything clicked. The patient's. I saw it in the room with the man, the one who at the mention of that man, the hospital's fluorescent lights flickered ominously, as if the building could feel our fear. He had a family, I stammered. It wanted me to save him. Not just him, the nurse pressed, her tone sharpening. It feeds off their despair. It's drawn to their grief, their unfinished business. The beeping of the monitors cut through the tension, and I felt a sudden urgency to take action. Then we have to find someone who knows more about it, I said, my pulse quickening. Where's the charge nurse? Maybe she can help. We hurried out of the room, moving toward the nurse's station. The hallway felt different now. The shadows seemed to whisper, curling around us with colder breaths. I caught a glimpse of movement in my peripheral vision, quickly turning to see nothing. Stay close, the nurse instructed, her tone firm. We may not have time. As we reached the station, it was empty, devoid of any sign of life. Panic surged again. Where is everyone? I asked, my voice rising in pitch. They should be here. Just then, the lights flickered off completely, plunging us into darkness. My breath caught in my throat. The silence felt deafening. A moment later, I heard a soft laugh echoed through the shadows, too familiar yet unsettling. Is someone there? I called out, forcing my voice to stay steady. In response, the laughter faded and a door swung open at the far end of the hallway. I exchanged alarmed glances with the nurse. Should we check? She whispered. Before I could answer, a figure stepped out from the darkness. It was a woman, her features obscured in shadow. This way, she beckoned, her voice smooth and melodic. You're not safe here. I hesitated. Something in her gaze felt wrong. Who are you? I managed to ask, the question tumbling out despite my instincts screaming at me to run. But the laughter returned, louder now, as the shadows tightened around us. I suddenly understood we had unearthed something much more dangerous than a mere ghost. Then, as if to punctuate the moment, the machines behind us began to beep wildly, each sound reverberating through the tension that had built in the hallway. I took a step toward the woman. What do you know? But before she could answer, the lights flickered back on, illuminating the hallway in harsh fluorescent light. The woman was gone. And in her place stood the figure from before, lurking just behind the nurse, its shape growing darker as it prepared to strike. Run! I shouted, the urgency of the moment crashing down on us. We were out of time. I bolted down the hallway, the nurse just behind me. The shadows seemed to stretch and twist, grasping at our heels. I didn't look back. I could feel the weight of something dark following us, closing in as we raced toward the exit. Where do we go? The nurse shouted, her voice edged with panic. The stairwell could be safer. I nodded, veering right toward the stairs. The sound of our feet echoed in the empty corridor, mingling with the increasing beeping of the monitors behind us. Each sound fueled my fear, urging me to run faster. Just as we reached the stairwell door, I heard a chilling whisper that stopped me in my tracks. Don't leave me. The voice was warped, almost a hiss, pulling at something deep inside me. My heart raced. I gripped the door handle but hesitated. Did you hear that? I asked, my voice shaky. Yes. We need to go. The nurse insisted, panic rising in her tone. We can't let it distract us. But I swayed, torn between leaving and checking where the voice had come from. I fought to shake it off, reminding myself of the urgency. I pushed the door open, and we rushed into the stairwell. The dim light flickered above us like a heartbeat, creating an unsettling rhythm beneath our fear. As we descended, I could feel every step echoing with dread. I kept my eyes on the stairs, but my mind raced with thoughts of what we were leaving behind. What do we do now? The nurse asked, her breath coming in sharp gasps. I don't know. We need a plan. We reached the bottom, and the door creaked ominously as I pushed it open. The hallway was still. Too still. The lights here were out, replaced by only the faint light of emergency lanterns. Where is everyone? I murmured, the hollow sound of my voice bouncing off the walls. A feeling of dread crawled over me again. Something was very wrong. Then I saw a flicker of movement at the far end of the corridor. My pulse quickened as I squinted through the shadows. It was a figure, just standing there, watching us. Get back! The nurse hissed, pulling me away. I stumbled, my feet awkward as I tried to backpedal. But curiosity gripped me again, and against my better judgment, I stepped toward the figure. Who are you? I called out, my voice trembling. No response. The figure only tilted its head slightly, as if considering my question. It took a step forward, and from the depths of the darkness, I saw pain reflected in its eyes. I can help, it said, its voice surprisingly gentle. My heart raced. What do you mean? Help the one who cries. There was a weight to those words, pulling at memories I wished to bury. Before I could think, the nurse pulled me by the shoulder. We can't trust it. We have to keep moving. But a sinking feeling settled in my stomach. Wait. There is something about it. Suddenly, a sharp noise cut through the stillness, a crash from the nurse's station we had just left. It was followed by a series of frantic footsteps. I turned to the nurse, dread pooling in my gut. What was that? I don't know, but we have to go, she urged, dragging me away from the figure. As we took off again, I felt the pull of something unseen. I cast one last glance at the figure, which was slowly fading back into the darkness. My heart raced with questions. Who was it? What did it know? We sprinted down the hall, each heartbeat a countdown. And then I heard it again, the soft whisper, echoing with despair. Don't leave me. I couldn't shake the feeling that leaving now would mean leaving behind something crucial. The urgency gripped me tighter, pushing me forward even as the darkness clawed at my heels. I burst through the door to the main lobby, my breath hitching as I pushed past the panic that had been building inside for days. The fluorescent lights flickered overhead, and the familiar setting of the hospital, usually a place of healing, felt shrouded in something sinister. My thoughts spiraled as shadows danced at the corners of my vision. Is anyone here? I shouted, my voice echoing through the empty space. The silence that answered was deafening, filled only with the distant hum of the hospital equipment, now seemingly mocking my growing sense of dread. Nurses typically bustling about during the night shifts were nowhere to be found. Where are they? The nurse beside me asked, eyes darting around as if searching for the employees who should have been here. Panic crept up her voice, mirroring the knot in my stomach. I turned back toward the entrance doors, half expecting to see that shadowy figure appear. Instead, my gaze settled back on the hallway we came from. We should go back, I said. We need to check on the patients. No. The nurse pulled me back, urgency coloring her tone. We can't go back. It'll only lead us back into its trap. In that moment, a loud, echoing crash resounded from the direction we had just come from. I jolted, instinctually trying to peer toward the source of the sound. What was that? I managed, my heart racing. The nurse's station. Come on. She urged, dragging me with her toward the exit, desperate to get us away from the chaos. Yet something inside me rebelled against retreat. The whispers, the voices, they haunted me, tugging at memories I couldn't fully grasp but knew I had to confront. No. I have to help them, I declared, breaking free of her grip and spinning back toward the hall where we had just come from. Please, don't. She shouted in desperation, her hands reaching out as if to physically pull me away. But I was done running. I pushed through the swinging doors, racing down the corridor with the haunting whispers swelling around me like an encroaching storm. Help him, help her, the echoing voices begged. They were inside my head now, igniting a fire of determination that pushed aside my fear. I reached room 213 just as the door creaked open ominously. The patient lay seemingly alone, her gaze fixed on something outside. A chill rippled through me as I entered, eyes scanning for the figures lurking in the shadows. My heart ached, the urgency coursing through me was suffocating. Where is everyone? I asked the patient, kneeling beside her to look into her distant eyes. They're gone. They come for me. They come for us all. Her voice was barely above a whisper, laced with a resignation that gripped me. Who? Who is coming? I pressed, desperate for answers, desperate to understand how we could end this. The shadows. They feed off memories, she wailed, tears cascading down her frail cheeks. You mustn't engage with them. You must. Suddenly, I felt the oppressive weight of darkness flooding the room, choking the air. I scrambled to my feet and faced the door, heart pounding as I prepared for whatever darkness loomed beyond. Help me, the disembodied whisper echoed, as strong as a breath against my ear. I wasn't alone. With newfound clarity, I summoned my courage. Show yourself. I yelled, my voice unwavering. The shadows writhed, curling into a more distinct figure, the very same hollow-eyed specter that had haunted me throughout the week. You chose them over yourself, it hissed, its voice slithering through the air like smoke. Now you must join them. Panic surged in my chest. No. I will not let you take anyone else. I shouted defiantly, channeling every scrap of strength as I took a step forward. Do you not recognize your own grief? It spoke, the words echoing around me, twisting. I took a breath, heart pounding against the weight of it all. I refuse to be a part of your darkness. With my declaration, the atmosphere shifted as if the very fabric of reality strained against my conviction. The shadows recoiled slightly, and the whispers fell to a hush. Let them go. I screamed, my voice, now a force that surged through the air, pushing against the force that sought to envelop me. All this time, all I've wanted is my daughter back, I said, finally voicing the burden I had carried too long. This grief doesn't define who I am. I will not be a vessel for your hunger. With every word, I felt a blinding light swell within me until it burst outward, scattering the darkness like ashes in the wind. The figure shrieked, its form shuddering under the force of my will. In that moment of clarity, I saw all the faces I'd lost a flicker of recognition and warmth radiated as they echoed back to me, fading into light. I closed my eyes tight, feeling their love wrap around me like a gentle embrace. When the light finally faded, I opened my eyes to silence. The shadows were gone, the darkness lifted from the room. The patient looked up at me, a glimmer of hope in her eyes. What did you do? She asked softly, still shaken. I chose to remember, I exhaled, relief flooding over me. I chose to let go. But as she nodded knowingly, something deep within my gut snagged at me. The whispers from the hospital weren't entirely gone. An unsettling feeling lingered, unanswered questions swirling like dust in the air. Are we safe? I whispered, doubt creeping in again like a fog. I glanced towards the exit where the nurse stood, her figure silhouetted against the light. I wanted to believe everything was over, that we could go back to normal, but something in her eyes hinted at a mystery still unresolved. Things aren't over, she said, echoing my thoughts. We have to go. We stepped into the hall together, uncertainty lingering as the fluorescent lights flickered above. I felt a tremor in my heart, but the weight that had held me captive for too long began to dissolve. As we exited into the dawn light, I couldn't shake the knots of unease that remained. I would never forget those moments in the hospital, both the beautiful and the terrible. Sometimes, the line between healing and darkness blurred in inexplicable ways, and I knew I would carry those shadows with me for a long time. Even as the sun rose, I glanced back at the building one last time, and for a fleeting moment, I thought I could hear that haunting hum linger in the air. And there, amidst my reflections, lay the uncertainty of whether what I faced was truly real or just a figment of my deepest fears, a whisper of the past that faded just beyond my reach.